So, George, it looks like we've got our first question in. At the start, you said there were 2 workforce fatalities, but the slide said 3. Could you please clarify that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, my apologies. There were 3 workforce fatalities this year. There were 2 associated with road driving. The third one was, just to be clear, the third one was a fatality to a train cleaner in a depot who fell onto the track and was electrocuted. So there were definitely three workforce fatalities.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Next one's on suicides. The number of suicides this year was the highest on record. Is this just happening on the railway?
No, I mean, the indications are not. So certainly the figures that we have up until 2013-14 show a similar rise nationally. So this isn't purely a railway problem or a railway issue. But having said that, the fact that we know that some suicides occur on the railway means that the industry takes them very seriously and has some means to put in place control measures. So the latest figures, I think we have an indication that the figures for this year from the Office of National Statistics, which will line up with our figures, say a very similar trend is occurring nationwide.
Great, thanks. And next on trespass, do you have a good idea of why people would trespass on the railway?
Well, there's a range of reasons, as you'd expect, but actually, if you go into the annual safety performance report, there are some charts that break down the different causes and the different reasons behind trespass. We do that. The level of data that we collect does include the causes and the categorisation of different trespasses, and it's, as you'd expect, it's things like people taking shortcuts across the line. Vandalism and people accessing the track for those reasons. So there's a whole range of measures, but if you want to know them, we can. If anybody wants to know more, then that detail is included in the report.
Great, thanks. Now, a while ago, there seemed to be a big problem of copper theft on the railway. Do you know, is that still a problem? Has it gone away?
It's still something that the railway is very actively combating. But actually, again, there is a chart in the there is a figure for this, I believe, in the report. Which does show that there has been real success in tackling copper theft. So I think previously we found that if you one of the charts tracks copper theft with the price of copper actually, and found a very strong correlation, and that correlation seems to have been broken in recent years. So with all the initiatives and all the efforts that have gone into tackling copper theft, there does seem to have been a very clear indication that there's been some real successes there, which obviously does impact on trespass as well. Okay,
thank you. And the next question. When you say road driving risk, does this also include rail replacement services?
No, it doesn't. So the road driving risk at the minute does not include rail replacement buses. There is a recognition that those are things that need to be considered and managed. And actually, as we do the work, I think I mentioned just now, the work redeveloping the SMIS system. That's an example of the sort of extra data we're looking to get and understand as part of the road driving risk project through the use of the new version of SMIS. So there's very much a recognition that needs to be understood better, but currently it's not within the scope of the reporting.
Okay, and the next question is a fortune-telling question here. 8 years without a train accident sounds good, but does that mean we're due to see one soon?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer. I mean, if you look at it purely from a statistical basis, we're no more likely or less likely to see one this year than we were last. Those 8 years have gone now, statistically speaking. We still have the same level of chances of a train accident happening. There is, as we saw from the PIM chart, there is a residual level of risk on the railway. So we know that there could happen. We could have another 8 years free of accidents, or we could have an accident very soon. We really don't. To understand that really effectively comes down to more local knowledge about the controls and measures that are in place. And that's exactly the sort of thing that the various groups and various train operating companies and Network Rail are looking at.
Okay, and the next one a bit more specific perhaps. Recent trends in train accidents have been pretty flat. What can the industry do to achieve another step reduction like happened after TPWS was introduced?
I guess there's a couple of different ways to answer that. I mean, obviously, the 10-year TPWS strategy is specifically looking at what we're doing between now and when we're expecting to have much more fully implemented ERTMS and ETCS, the European Train Control System. And obviously, that's an inherently more fail-safe method of train protection. So we would expect to see a step change then. I guess. And this is where, again, I come back to the level of data analysis that we do and that we can do, in that it almost feels like there are less obvious nationwide measures. There don't seem to be those now, which is why we're doing a lot more work to understand the risk more locally, to get more into the specific circumstances of the risk and the local factors, and look at more targeted measures. So I know we've done quite a bit of work as part of the TPWS strategy group, looking at optimising loop fitments and things to really make sure that rather than a one size fits all, we've really thought through the local circumstances and developed more targeted control measures. So I think ERTMS in the long term, ETCS in the long term, but in the shorter term, it's going to come down to more targeted, a mixed bag of different measures depending on the local need.
Okay, thank you. Another important area to consider: have workforce assaults gone up in the same way as passenger and public assaults?
As far as I can remember, I'm pretty sure, you have to look into the report for the detail, but I believe they haven't, certainly not to the same extent. So there is definitely something worth investigating there to see what the differences might be, because we've got a clear counter case in terms of doing some analysis and better understanding what is driving the passenger risk. I mean, at this stage, I could come up with some hypotheses. That's the sort of thing we'd need to test. And again, this has been flagged as an issue where the people on trains and at stations risk group is planning to do more work in the future. So probably by the time we get around to the next report, there may be more to say on what exactly is driving the passenger assault statistics. Okay,
and for help for the viewers, has this webinar been recorded?
Yes, it has, and I believe it will be put on our YouTube channel, I think. We can check and clarify that. So I'm pretty sure it certainly is being recorded, and I'm pretty sure it will be made freely available to anybody who wants to see it.
Okay, and here's a big controversial one. As an industry, could we be justified in spending less on rail safety?
Well, again, that's a very broad question. I mean, I'd flip it around the other way to say that we do, and we're almost uniquely as an industry, we have a very clear consensus between ourselves and our regulator across the industry for the process that we apply to do safety-related appraisals, so working out what we spend. And that's a real efficiency, because where you have separate processes, it brings inefficiency, it brings confusion, and it does tend to drive risk aversion and general lack of assurance. So we actually, through the document Taking Safe Decisions, which again is available on our website, and subsequent documents that references, we have a very clear process for doing safety-related appraisal, and that's something that we should all get behind and use, because it will bring us the certainty and the targeted investment that the industry wants and needs.
Okay, and again on communication of this information, is today's slide deck available online?
I mean, I don't specifically know that, but I'm pretty sure we can. There can't be any problems with making it available online. If I'm sure that's what people would want. So, yes, we can do that.
Okay, GSMR communications have been introduced nationally over the last 12 months. Is there evidence of safety improvement with faster communications following incidents and fewer drivers leaving their cabs?
So that's an interesting one, and I think there's a certain thing about. So when I mentioned before what the work we were doing to try and align the reporting with the industry groups, it's exactly those sorts of hypotheses we need to flag and track over time. So I'm not sure exactly where we are on that question now, but what we're trying to do through the work of the groups, through the realignment of the report, is to actually get more sustained focus on issues like that. And actually, if there are particular questions that we want to answer, actually making sure that we focus on them for the long term, and actually actively try and find the data to feed back and answer those sorts of questions. So we could maybe need to have a think about that one. I think there's a couple of projects that we're working on in a very similar area to that. So that's an interesting question, but I think more broadly, as we move forward and redevelop the SMIS system and get more integrated work between the data and the groups, those are exactly the sorts of questions we would hope to be able to shed a bit more light on.
Okay, now here's a very specific one on the last slide. Why are two categories reported as figures, but the RISE figure is a percentage, i.e. 6%? So what is the number involved?
Why are two categories reported as figures? Read the last slide. I guess I'd have to see the last.
Right, we come back to that one.
Last slide to understand exactly what was meant for that one, because without the slide I can't get the context. Maybe we could move on to the next one.
Yeah, okay. And we get the next question.
So has
the Road Driving Risk Project delivered any early indications of the key risks facing the industry in this area?
Well, I think the Road Driving Risk Project has certainly flagged a whole range of issues, from sort of contractor workforce and sort of shift work and fatigue, taxis and the use of taxis for taking staff around, for various shifts, including train drivers. There's a whole range of issues that have been flagged, and there's different activities that are underway in terms of. There is actually on our website there is a resource available that's sharing information around road driving risk, where people can go and find out more information. So again, there's not a simple answer to that. I think there are a whole range of issues that have been identified, and as we work with the data, we will inevitably understand more and work out what the key areas of focus should be in the longer term.
Okay, and this is the last question, George. What more should the industry do to inform the public about the risks of STFs?
I think so. So I think I mentioned in the presentation that there was a lot of work that was recently underdone. There were some industry workshops that were run by the People on Trains and Stations Risk Group, which looked at, in a very structured way, did an analysis of the risks from slips, trips and falls. I think the feedback we got from the people who participated in that it was really good. Just going through the exercise was really good in terms of sharing learning across different organisations. And there was a general message that it felt like that was something that they needed to be doing much more of. We've generated a lot of material from that, and we are in the process of working out how we can make that make that information more widely available. Certainly RSSB and its stakeholder groups and through our communications can be involved in the process of sharing that information.
Okay, thanks very much, George. Now, this webinar will be available on the website tomorrow, but that's all the questions we've got time for today. So on behalf of George and myself, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to participate in today's webinar, and we hope you found it useful. Both reports are available to download on our website should you wish to read them in full. You will now have the opportunity to provide your feedback on today's webinar by completing the short survey, which will pop up on your screen. So we'd be grateful if you would take a few minutes and let us know your thoughts. So thanks again and goodbye.